Thank you, Terry. Thank you for starting us up tonight and being in control of all of us. I've had a wonderful weekend. I spent the weekend out at our observing site and taking pictures, and almost everything worked the whole time, which is quite unusual for astro imaging, just to be perfect like that. But it was pretty good star party out there. And I hope you guys are having a good new moon weekend out there too. We got some cool things coming up in the near future, and I think I'll share them with you so that you'll know, get you all excited about it. First thing we're going to look at is the calendar, of course. Mike is here tonight with us. I've known Mike since, well, he was about that tall. I've known Mike for a long time. He's been doing outreach in Southern California and around the world, and he's going to tell us about some of the joys he's had reaching out to people, turning them on to astronomy and all that kind of cool stuff. So he's going to tell us about that. Brandon's going to be here next week. Now, Brandon is here with us tonight. He was so excited to be here, and he wants to tell us about what he's going to talk about next week. So I'm going to stop sharing for a bit here, and I'm going to let Brandon come on over and talk to everybody about what's happening. Brandon?
All right. Thanks, Alex. So next week, I just want to go over kind of a broad overview of taking astrophotography of dark and dusty nebula throughout the sky, how to search for them, how to find different targets, and once you have those targets, kind of creating expectations, what you're going to get out of your equipment, as well as what kind of shooting situation, Bortle class skies, that you can really get exceptional images, or you can still get pretty good images even from middle Bortle classes. So something a little different for the astrophotography. I'll also do a demonstration quickly through PixInsight, just how I top to bottom go through an edit of one of those dark nebula.
A couple of things we have to make note of here, Brandon. Don't forget that your top priority next week isn't about football, okay? Even though it's on at the exactly same time. You got that? You got that, buddy? And the other thing is, watch out. There's a shark on your ear, okay? So, going back to the calendar and stuff, we've got a lot of things coming up, and one of the places I want you to realize, oops, I'm in the wrong screen here. One of the things I want you to realize is that Rory has been working, getting us a workshop going. And that workshop, we've been using Terry's data. And if I've got, which screen am I supposed to be on now? I'm supposed to be on that screen when I go to the TAIC workshop. Workshop is where we give you a bunch of data, and you can go back and get that data. This is all the one sample data. I think, what's that, Eric's M33, I forget. Anyway, it's there, and you can process it however you like. You can get the data by going to get the zip file here. We're all on the page that says TAIC workshop on the astroimagingchannel.org. And you get the zip file here, you process it, and you submit it here. Rory will look at it, and he can't take everybody, but he'll take some people that have done something different, not necessarily better or worse, but something different that he thinks can teach us all a little bit about something. So participate in that. And I want you to know, sometimes people are looking for stuff to process. There's a whole bunch of stuff to process here where we've all done this 5 or 6 times before. And I encourage you to go ahead and grab some of that data, process it yourself, and then look up the different shows. They're all keyed to a different show here. Look up the different shows where we've shown how people have gotten their different renditions of that same data. It's really a fascinating process. We always need new presenters. So please hit the contact button. And when you've hit the contact button, tell us who you are. And and by the way, there was one fellow out there that I got an email from him the other day. I know you're out there, buddy. I'll get to you as quickly as I can, okay? And I think we're ready to go. Mike, are you about ready to go? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, Mike, tell us about the wonder of telling people about astronomy.
Right. Well, okay, so it's wonderful to share astronomy with people. It doesn't always work out the way you expect it to. A little bit like Alex's weekend with his imaging gear. Most of it works okay, but once in a while you get a clunker. So I'm going to share a whole bunch of pictures from around the world and various things. and maybe some things you haven't seen before. I mean, this is an important thing. Probably all of you, when people hear you're into astronomy, they want to know about the latest thing that James Webb Telescope discovered or something. So you got to keep up on this stuff. But also, we don't always speak the same language as other people. So anyway, let me go ahead and let's see. Here's the screen I want to share. And get over my notes and stuff. Okay. So that's who I am and what I'm doing, which we already covered. And let me start my timer here. Okay. So one of the things I always go back to is something that I led during the International Year of Astronomy, that those of you who have been involved in astronomy for at least 13 years, it was a big deal to you. And that's the 100 Hours of Astronomy. It was a cornerstone project, and we had, these are registered events around the world, but I know that's 2,400 represented there in 100 countries, but I know there was more than that because I was in touch with people all over the place. This was in 2009. And there's just, most of these pictures just come from that. This was, the main thing was a global star party. It was one event, one star party taking place around the world on the same night. Somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people looked through telescopes that night. So it was a big deal. And this is just a sampling, of course. We had viewing here in New Zealand. And this one, well, I should put my glasses on here. Let's see. Okay. So this one, I think, was the Philippines. And it's been a while. I've forgotten some of these. This was in Pakistan, and of course, China had 100 hours, 100 telescopes for 100 hours because they got lots of telescopes there. That's where we get them from. This is the biggest one. It was in the UK someplace. This is in Iraq, northern Iraq, in Kurdistan. This is actually a telescope that I took there when I went to visit the people there doing stuff, traditional Kurdish clothing there. Down in Baghdad, they were out there too. And this was a big event that pretty much everybody jumped into. Bangladesh, they made their own T-shirts and banners and everything with our logo. I can never remember which country this is in. I just like the coat she's wearing. Someplace in East Asia. Nepal and Kathmandu, and in India, Iran. Same telescope as in Iraq, but this one is in Bolivia or Peru, I forget which, up in the Andes. A lone sidewalk astronomer doing showing the sun in California, and a star party that night in Argentina. This is from a different thing here, but this is in Oman. I just happened to like this picture. So I founded Astronomers Without Borders and ran that for a long time. And this is one of the things that we did there, was this observing day for the sun. Someplace in North Africa, again, back in Pakistan. And this is in the Philippines. One of the things that you'll notice here, if you're in North America, you're worrying about, oh my gosh, it's all old white men pretty much in this. Well, that's because you're in North America, because it's not true anywhere else, maybe Western Europe, but this is typical of the rest of the world. So when we worry about where the young astronomers are coming from, well, we're not importing them from China, but there are plenty of them there and other places in Asia and everywhere else. And you'll notice it's more women, more girls than guys. And that's typical in a lot of places as well. This is the daytime in Romania. And also in Romania, I mean, for those of you who do outreach, you recognize this. This is why we do it. I mean, this is the payoff here. The guys that go out every month, just like, astrophotographers will be out every new moon weekend in a dark sky place, if they've got one, and collecting data. This is what the amateurs do around the world for the most part. Everybody likes to share it, and everybody gets into the act here. So this is a little girl in Brazil who's sharing it, the view in the telescope. If you haven't got a telescope handy, well, what do? get out your camel cart, of course. And this was a display in India that they were taking around. Obviously, camels are common enough there that the kids were crowded around the cart and nobody was looking at this weird animal up in front. So here's the thing. There's a lot of misunderstandings, misconceptions, and you get some pretty weird questions. And doing outreach, if you're doing public outreach at a public observatory or at a star party or something like that, the families will come in, the kids will run to the telescope, and their parents will kind of be very skittish because they know they don't know anything about it. They don't even know what to ask, but the kids lead, and that's what's really cool. So you aim it to the kids. The parents don't know any more than the kids do. And that's the thing. This is the thing that's different about astronomy. If you are a botanist, nobody's going to look at that tree there and say, is this a tree or a bush? But, you know, people, they don't know the difference between a planet and a star. They don't know that the sun's a star. They've never looked at the sun anyway. So there's just a very limited amount of knowledge about astronomy amongst the public. Now, this is actually a very cool thing because you get to introduce people to your passion, starting from nothing for the most part. There are people that come up every once in a while. Sometimes it's some kid that's just gone crazy about it, like some of us did when we were kids, and they know everything and they'll ask you questions you can't answer. But you're really starting from scratch for the most part. And so the thing is, it's not their fault. I mean, it's not part of everyday life, but people are fascinated and they do want to hear about it. And we'll get into some of that. So some of the problems that you can run into. Well, when you say you're an astronomer, you know, they might ask you, can you do my chart? It's, you know, and even the people that know astronomy and astrology are not the same thing. They'll goof and call you an astrologer, and you know, that's comes with the job. But they know better. There are places, though, like in India and other places in South Asia, for example, where more than 90% of the people believe in astrology, and they do make major decisions based on astrological forecasts. And the astronomers there, professional ones, there are lots of great professional astronomy there, but there are some who are working at institutes of astrology because it gets all mixed up. So this is what people think about astronomers here, where what's this? Oh, well, you can read, you probably already read it already, but this is what it's like, you know, a gang of tough astrophysicists hogging the telescope and so on. This is not the way things work out. But if you're a cosmologist, yeah, you got other problems, and you have to tell people, no, you don't know how to fix their hair. Then there are what people think about observatories and this typical thing with the telescope sticking out. So the reality is, at observatories, this is an observing room at a professional observatory. I don't remember where this is, but this is what it's like. It's full of computers, and that's what you do if you're even there at a professional observatory. Now, for amateur astronomy, this is what a lot of people's houses look like. This is Ed Ting, by the way, who writes for a website that I'm the editor of. I'll mention later, Astro Gear Today. And so that's the reality for observing, but the reality for astrophotography, it's kind of like the same thing. You guys are spending a lot of time on computer screens, especially these days, not like the old film days when Alex and I were young people back in the 18th century or something. And you know, you had to stay with your eye glued to the guide scope. So this is the kind of stuff that people know about astronomy. Okay, this is a major source of information. And all I can say about this is my family hates watching sci-fi movies with me because this stuff drives me nuts. I mean, really, how many millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars do they spend on this? I couldn't ask somebody what a parsec is. We get a lot of questions. Anyway, like, what if this or what if that? And then my all-time least favorite comment of all is when I say, well, no, we're not going to be able to get out to that star in our lifetimes. We can't go faster than the speed of light. And they say, as far as we know, because our understanding changes all the time. Well, yeah, that's like sort of saying, you know, we're never going to be able to fly by flapping our arms as far as we know. So it can be difficult. People want to believe what they want to. We also have to deal with things like Mars is going to be as big as the full moon this August, which was started in 2003 when Mars was at opposition and the hype was crazy. So other things, but there are some good questions like asking about the images they actually see, and they want to know what the heck it is. So other things we have to deal with all the time, of course. I titled this one after something I had recently. Somebody on Nextdoor, this font of accurate information from people around the neighborhood, captured something on her doorbell camera off in the west, and there was a big light there, and there were clouds and things. She and everybody jumped in. Oh yeah, that's definitely a UFO, definitely aliens. And so somebody else pointed out first, that's the moon. And I looked it up and said, darn, that's what it is for sure. And then of course they say, no, it's not the moon. So I said, okay, where's the moon in the picture then? Critical thinking is not a big thing sometimes. And the reason for this one is somebody said, no, there's a base for UFOs. You can see them going out towards the west and dropping into the ocean to their base. Well, we live north of Los Angeles International Airport, big hub for going to Asia. And if you accept the fact that the Earth is round, the planes are disappearing over the horizon. So and you can't blame people because they've never even thought of these things before. So you do your best to inform them, but you do your best. You guys have probably all gotten this stuff here before. Einstein was wrong, and I have something that's better, and it turns out they have no knowledge of physics whatsoever because what they say is kind of nonsense, but they're sure they've solved the problem. And there's this one. I love this. I bet let's see, the moon's made of cheese. And then you go through all this explanation for how you know what it's actually made of. And the answer is, yeah, I'm still thinking cheese. So there are something, now this is a minority. We'll get to the good stuff before long. I have personally observed the Earth, the world coming to an end many, many times. This was my first Criswell, if you've ever seen Plan 9 from Outer Space, one of the cheesiest movies ever made. It's wonderful. You got to see it. And this was Criswell. He went off the air the day after the world did not end in the 1950s. And it's been a steady parade of world-ending events ever since then. We also have potentially hazardous asteroids, which are not at all hazardous. I think it's unfortunate labeling. And so, that's one of the things we have to deal with. Oh, I got a message on the answering machine one time. It was while my phone line was being used for Astronomers Without Borders, and the answering machine was an actual machine. This is an old thing, not voicemail. And I got this message that planet Nibiru is in the sky right now, and he wanted somebody to call him back. And of course, I knew immediately what it was he was seeing. There was, in fact, a planet in the sky, but it wasn't Nibiru. People don't know. People grow up never noticing that you can see the moon during the daytime. And it's a common misconception. They don't know what causes the phases of the moon, if the phases are the same in different places around the world. These are teachable moments in a really good sense, not making a joke about it. It's a great opportunity to fill people in on the place where they live. and you know what's going on. So oh, and then we're still dealing with people who are mad at astronomers for demoting Pluto. They want it to be a planet. Well, it never was a planet. It was just labeled wrong, just like Ceres was and Vesta was and everything else. And planetary scientists don't care anyway. So, you know, get over it. But change is hard. You know, there are cultural perspectives. This is an interesting one, I think. A friend of mine was teaching astronomy to Tibetan monks in northern India. And she said, these are very smart, well-educated people. But when she got to the point where she said something about people walking on the moon, they said, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And it turns out they'd never really understood that the moon is a place. It was just a thing in the sky. It was not relevant to them and what they were doing. But they loved looking through the telescopes and getting this new information about it. So you can't make any assumptions about anything with astronomy. Okay, never mind. But there are a lot of good questions, and they can be an awful lot of fun to talk to people about because people really do love astronomy. That's how we get so many people to look through telescopes. It's a huge opportunity, and they love it. And maybe you can remember back to when you were a kid or an adult, doesn't matter, and you got a chance to see the rings of Saturn for the first time or craters on the moon. So good questions that we get. Well, this is my favorite. How do you know that? You give them some outlandish fact about the universe and they say, how do you know that? That just leads into everything possible. And you got to start easy. But, you know, if the people really are curious and are sitting there listening to this, you got hundreds of years of history that you can go through in a minute and tell people all the different ways in which you can learn about things. So this is an introduction to science. This is showing them what doing scientific research is really all about. And, you know, we're born explorers. Anybody who has had kids or seen kids knows that they like to run around. Take a 2-year-old. Runs into the kitchen, opens the cabinets, pulls all the pots and pans out, looks around at their mess, pulls some more out. You know, they're just learning. They're exploring. They like to go off into places that they shouldn't be. And that's the way we are as people. So you can see the lights go on in people's eyes when you're talking about some of these things. Okay, so here's a good one for imaging. Is that color real? And this is not as simple as it sounds. Unfortunately, people are used to hearing, well, we use false color to show something. Now, as you guys know, all of this is data. All of these colors, they're numbers, they're data in a matrix, and with multiple matrices that you're stacking and everything else. And so this comes down to a difficult question, which is, what is real color? Does that mean what you would see if you were out there? And we all see things a little bit differently. But then our eyes do not have a flat response curve. So we see some colors better than others. So the images that you're taking, they'll show, you know, reds and things that and I've looked through some big telescopes up to, 5 meters, and you see colors, but you don't see the same colors because our eyes are more sensitive to the green. So what is a real color anyway? And then they'll ask that about things like Chandra X-ray telescope images. You can't see that. And James West is another example that works primarily in areas that we can't see at all anyway. So these are choices, and these are things that you might have had to do, but it's something if you're talking to people, you need to be able to talk about what the color represents, because the colors are just like any other chart showing data. And you need to be able to explain what that means and how our mind interprets it. It's a difficult question, but it's a really fascinating one for a lot of people to learn about. Okay. How can you comprehend those distances when you tell them about stuff? This is an easy one for me. I just say, I can't. They're numbers. It's just meaningless other than numbers. It's our brains just aren't set up for that. End of story for me. Can I see the planets without a telescope? This is a revelation to people to be able to say, you know, when you show somebody Jupiter through a telescope, and then they'll look alongside the telescope and say, where is that? You know, and they're not sure you should be able to see it. It's that the brightest thing in the sky up there, that is the planet Jupiter, and those moons that you're seeing are orbiting around it. These are fun things to have to deal with, answering questions like this. And can I get a telescope that will let me see the craters on the moon, the rings of Saturn? Simple answer is yes. The follow-up question, which one should I get? Yeah, that's a tough one. And I can't give any simple answers. And people will get frustrated with me because I say, well, I need to know something about what you're going to do. Here's the thing. If somebody's getting their first car and says, what car should I get? Yeah, that's not so simple. If it was that simple, there'd only be one make of car, right? So, but you get to help them start on their way. And that's what's really good. Okay, so how do we answer the questions like that? Well, first of all, keep it simple. Those of you who are engineers, take an interpreter with you. And I work with lots of engineers, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way. And usually they laugh when I say something like that. But, you know, I know engineers that build spacecraft at JPL. And if I was going into space, I'd want them to build my spacecraft. But simple things, they go into too much detail. We really need to keep it simple. Remember that people don't really understand this in basic principles. I've seen somebody at a star party at it's a big conference. It was science. I'm sorry, I can't even remember what it was, but it wasn't astronomy per se. And they had all these people lined up who were, you know, having cocktails and in the evening, and they were showing M13. And while he was fussing for somebody asked, so what are we looking at? And he said, M13. Okay, this is not English. So I kind of jumped in and helped a little bit. Even if you don't understand the thing yourself because it's so complicated, like interference and how interferometers work, you don't try to tell them the whole thing because it's not possible. But you give them ideas and tell them, you know, where the data is. For example, I like to use analogies, which I guess is next. Things they're familiar with. Doing outreach at Mount Wilson Observatory, and we have CHARA interferometer there, a very big interferometer, and people would ask, well, how does this work? I would give them an example of interferometry or interference that they've seen in daily life. Like you got an oil slick on the water and you see these different colors. Well, that's because the light's going back and forth, and when it comes out, sort of combines together. That's where the information is. They're looking for information in how these patterns develop. And you know what? People are satisfied with that. If I told them the math behind it, which is the only way to understand it, which is why I don't understand it, it wouldn't work. So they want some connection to it. Now, that's kind of the worst example. Well, plus the time somebody said that nobody's able to explain quantum mechanics to me. Can you explain it to me? So, and he went away satisfied with my answer, which didn't explain quantum mechanics. It just explained why it's different than other types of mechanics. That is, it's something you have to do in domains that you don't ordinarily deal with. It was that kind of a thing. Just a concept. Why is it there? He didn't need to know what it was. So you give him something to walk away with. That was this one. If they just get a hint of the concept, that's a win. You know, they want to learn something. So you give them something. And that's good enough for the public. Now, this is not true for a lot of the stuff you do. And if somebody asks you about your equipment and stuff, and if you're an engineer and you want to go into the detail with somebody, that's great, but you got to keep it at their level. Oh, another thing that's really important: don't argue with a 9-year-old unless it's an actual 9-year-old, because they want to learn something. But if it's a 40-year-old acting like a 9-year-old, just don't bother. Really, I've wasted so much time on some people. It's not worth it. And also what I said, don't go past their limit. So here, they've stuck me here by myself, talking into a camera without being able to see anybody there. And I'm an outreach person, so I'm used to standing there talking to people and seeing if they get it or they don't get it. I can't see anybody there, so I don't even know if anybody's listening anymore, but I'm going to assume so. So, when you're there talking to people, you can tell and make sure that they get it. And you don't need to go too far. They can always ask another question, like, how do you know that? Oh, love that. That's the best question. That's a question everyone should ask. Well, for those of us in North America, in 2017, we dealt with the total solar eclipse. And my first eclipse was in 1979. Maybe Alex went to one before that too. I don't know. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. And some of us spend a lot of time trying to explain to people that they have to get into the path and why it's worth doing. And this is one of those things that you can't really explain to people. It's sort of like trying to explain, what the feeling you get from standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. You can't. There is no analogy here. The only thing I've ever tried to do is explain the feelings that overcome you, and people understand that because they've had that kind of experience. But why it's a big deal? You got to be there. We have another one coming up in 2024, and this one is it. Now, you will hear people say, I think I saw a total eclipse. If you think you saw a total eclipse, you didn't see a total eclipse. This is like saying, I think I got hit by a truck. You would know. And total solar eclipse is not the same as a partial. Well, I saw 90% of a total eclipse. Fred Espenak, formerly of NASA, put out the solar eclipse bulletins and still does a tremendous amount of this, said that almost seeing a total solar eclipse is like almost winning the lottery. You missed the main event. I think it was Jay Pasakoff who said it's like going to a concert and standing outside the building and listening to it from there. It's just you're missing the main thing. But it's a difficult thing because the schools are worried about liability. They keep everybody inside so they're not tempted to look at the sun, even though, of course, looking at the total eclipse is completely safe because you only have light from the corona. Even some optometrists and ophthalmologists in some countries that advise the governments get it wrong. So this is something that is coming up, and maybe you'll have a chance to persuade people, including yourself, if you've never done it. You just got to trust me on this. Talk to other people. You got to go. This is an experience of a lifetime, and it's why some of us, and I think maybe Alex does it too, chase around the world in different places to spend a few minutes in the shadow of the sun, the moon as it sweeps by. These are some pictures of sharing the view during the partial phase of the eclipse. I think you can tell which one of these people is the visitor here. And this is in Africa. This was 2006. We always take along eclipse glasses to share with people so they can look at the sun. This is one I co-led with an astronomy magazine editor to Turkey, and a young woman and her mother in traditional clothes there. Some students, this is all the same eclipse. Students in Cairo, And this is a different eclipse here. This one, everybody wants to get into the action there. This was in China, which, yeah, actually these were American-made glasses that were brought to China. And a friend of mine who went to Antarctica for the first total eclipse anybody had seen from the continent, and didn't bring enough eclipse glasses for everybody there. So another question that you're going to get, and I'll go through briefly. What good is astronomy anyway? Why study astronomy? Why do outreach in astronomy? Why waste your time telling people about stuff up in space? Well, first of all, it's a universal interest. It is the same everywhere around the world, and it is accessible everywhere, even where the facilities are otherwise lacking. This is a program that I helped with, brought it into the organization, and now has an educational observatory in the north of Tanzania. And I can guarantee you that that poster that's taped up there, that did not come from Tanzania. That was from a friend of mine who went there. They have a floor, so that's not too bad, but it's otherwise pretty sparse. They don't have a chem lab, a physics lab, a biology lab. They don't have anything. They don't have science training frequently in most places around the world. But if you go outside at night in some of these places, they have a better astronomy lab than we do. We have to pack up our gear and haul it out into a place away from the cities. If they're in a rural area in East Africa, this is just part of nature for them. So it is accessible to everyone. And here's my friend here who took along a Galileo scope to share with the kids there. And you can see how excited they are. How many people have ever looked through a telescope? For the most part, people have not, even terrestrial like this. And some learners here that he is showing some stuff. This continues. It's a great program. There was an eclipse there one time, and this school heard that they were that they had eclipse glasses there, and a school off in a little bit farther away got on the bus on a weekend and went over there, and the kids said, we want to be scientists too, and they're looking at the sun for the first time. These people just don't do that. Uganda. We got some glasses there. Astronomy. I knew somebody who was teaching astronomy in Peace Corps school in Tanzania, and he was doing this to introduce science. These are the reasons these students wanted to study science, but astronomy is a way to do that because it touches on everything. I know a lot of astrobiologists and other things. So there's chemistry and physics and everything else. STEM center in a refugee camp in northern Nigeria, something I've helped with and know the people here. And this is for the kids who have been chased away from their homes by Boko Haram. Look what they've got there is lots of pictures of astronomical objects. Organization that I've just started now recently got crowdfunded for telescopes to go to middle school astronomy clubs across Libya. They have a fantastic organization, Ministry of Education support, but they couldn't get telescopes, and these are brilliant young women, really inspiring. So they're on a ship right now on their way there. Astronomy for the blind and visually impaired. There are tactile things here. You can do this with your images so that people can feel them. Some people can still see a little bit through the telescopes. Legally blind, but otherwise they can see it. This is actually a planetarium program you hold in your lap, and then there's a narrator that talks to you. So they follow along here. So astronomy is of interest to everybody, whether they can see those visual things or not. And remember, we convert everything. We convert all that data into a visual representation because that's what goes on to Instagram. But there are other ways of doing it. And so there are many ways of doing it. we just happen to be mostly visual people. So astronomy, like I said, is everything. The most common thing around the world that people do is share it with other people because it gives us perspective. At least in my experience, this is what I see everyone doing. When I was in Iran one time and I gave a presentation, and they were asking a question: what do the American amateur astronomers do? And I said, well, they take their gear out into the desert someplace and take pictures. And they don't do that. They set up, and when I've asked them if they ever do that, they said some people do, but mostly it's outreach. They want to share with other people. They want to give people the perspective that we get from things like what this person is sitting in right there. And when we look up, we're looking out into the Milky Way galaxy, and that you learn that it is not someplace out there. That's here. We're in it. I mean, this is our home. It's our neighborhood. To me, going to a dark sky, looking through a telescope, is like living in your house in your backyard for your whole life. And one day you get up on the roof and you look out, and there's a whole huge area out there, and there are mountains and trees and other people and rivers and things that you'd never notice. That's all just above our heads. And the Earth is fantastic, but it's an awful small part of the whole thing. Well, of course, then there is the experience of seeing Earth from space. The overview effect is something that was described years ago by author Frank White, and talks about the shift in the paradigm, the shift in the way that astronauts see the Earth and think of the Earth after having seen it from space. And it is not just looking down at Earth. They're seeing it amongst a field of stars. They're seeing it as a planet, just like we see other planets, bigger than that, perhaps. But, when you're coming back from the moon, this is what you see. And it's just another planet, happens to be the best one for not just for life, but the most interesting and changing all the time. And, Bill Anders, who took this photo on Apollo 8, said, we came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth. Nobody really thought about it. Nobody planned on taking a picture of the Earth from out at the moon. The famous blue marble was taken on Apollo 17 on the way out to the moon. They finally got the idea, yeah, we got to take some pictures looking back. And this is the overview effect by Frank White, who had talked to a lot of astronauts and continues to. And this is a Voyager 1 taking a picture of the Earth and Moon from 7 million miles away. The first one to include the Earth and Moon in a single frame, taken by a spacecraft. And then, of course, there's the famous pale blue dot. And here's the thing that astronomy, I've met astronauts. I know people that have gone on the suborbital flights, and others that are planning on going out. I'm probably not going to make it. But astronomy is our overview effect. Astronomy shows us where we are. I mean, those of you out there understand what's going on when the Earth rotates and the stars go by and what you're looking at. You have a sense of the scale. You have a 3D vision of what's out there. Astronomy does that for us, especially if you're doing things with people in other parts of the world. We're just looking at different windows in spaceship Earth, it rotates around. We're on the same bus. We're just looking left or right, and then it turns around and we see the same thing the other person did. It really gives us perspective. And like Sagan said about the pale blue dot, and you get far enough away, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another. So astronomy to me is important for all of these reasons. I love this image by Wally Paholka of the world at night, and Astropix, who took this panorama from top of Mauna Kea. This is the Milky Way galaxy. I mean, we're most of the way out towards the edge. So if you were looking at our galaxy from close up at edge on, it would look something quite a bit like that. And, when you think about the fact that this is our galaxy, this is not the Milky Way. This is our galaxy. This is where we are. We're just looking out at it. That's our overview effect. Okay, so I'm going to mention here real quick, Astronomy for Equity is my latest thing. If you want to see what other things it is that we're doing, very slow right now. Funding is the reason. It's always the reason with nonprofits. But you can see, down there I've got David Levy has got a blog post here. Got a lot of good advisors. If you're interested, and you can check that out, I'll put up the URL. If you're interested in this stuff, you can contact me too. Absolutely, I talk to everybody. And also, Molly said I could put in a plug for Astro Gear Today. I'm the editor of that. If you don't know about this, it is a very cool website. It's the only one that really has got, we've got 400 articles up there now after a couple of years of being involved in this, and lots of reviews, including Molly's and Alan Dyer and Ed Ting and who else? A few others, some people that you would recognize and a lot of people that you don't. And Daniel Milme, who is on last week here on the Astro Imaging channel, talking about his mount. And we just published a review on that as well. So news and so on. And also, if you're interested in writing, if you're a writer, or if you're just into the nuts and bolts and you can communicate okay, let me know, because we're always looking for new writers who've got other gear that they can do. These are the websites, and that's Astro Gear, but I should have left the space out of there because that doesn't work. But take that out, and then that's where you can go to that. And Astronomy for Equity, that is the latest thing as well. And that is it. I'm looking forward to comments and questions and whatever, and seeing faces again, something other than my reflection in the camera lens. So,
well, thanks, Mike. I've been monitoring over in YouTube. You provoked a lot of conversation. I don't see any questions, but
cool.
Alex, do you have any
Yeah.
questions you'd like to pose?
I would like to talk to Chandrasekhar, who asked, so like, what should I be carrying around for my first solar eclipse? What equipment should I take? And I've already told him, don't take any equipment. And look at Mike going, yep, don't take any equipment.
Yeah. The solar eclipse, it's an experience. I decided on my first, back when Alex and I were just little kids.
Stop that. Stop that. I told you that back in 3rd grade, and you were in 4th.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit older. That I was determined. This was an interesting thing. I was running the telescope at Griffith Observatory, and people were coming in all the time, because that makes you like the Astronomer Royal of Los Angeles. And, you can tell people whatever you want and they'll believe you, even if it's not true. So you got to be careful. And they would ask, what is this eclipse going to be like? Because it's the first one since 1918 in the US. And I told them all about it, because I knew all about it. I'd seen the pictures. I knew what was going on. And then when the shadow of the moon swept over me, I can't tell you all the different phenomena. There isn't enough time. But I sat there and said, what is going on? It was so freaky. It was overwhelming. It was scary. I mean, the world turns upside down, in ways that I'd have to talk for a while to give you an experience. So you want to experience it. I knew there'd be friends of mine somewhere along the path taking pictures, and I can get their pictures and they can do better than I can. And somehow everybody wants to get their own picture. This is an experience. This is, you want to be fully into it and observing everything around. Binoculars for looking at the corona during totality, that's cool. I've never looked through a telescope at the corona. I've never felt the need to. But to me, everything that happens around you is the most important thing. So you bring yourself and just be ready.
Yeah.
So when you're going out to an eclipse, you've looked forward to it for a year, half a year. You planned it. You've hoped and hoped that the skies are going to be clear. And it lasts for 2 minutes. And if you're mucking around with a camera, you've lost the whole effect.
You did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And I
Well,
remember the eclipse we went to a couple of years ago out in Nebraska, where we had everyone lined up on the ground, and we had counseled them, don't take pictures and get ready. And as soon as it happened to totality, you heard the same thing from everyone. They all gasped. And I don't know how you translate that and describe it to anyone else, except that's what happens. Everyone did the same thing.
Yeah,
Well, if you're going to experience the eclipse, experience the eclipse.
the only thing I try to do is tell people how people react to it, so they can understand this is something outside of their comprehension. That one that I was in Turkey, this guy had set up a video camera pointed at him and his wife, and as soon as the shadow swept over the last bit of light, he's looking up at it, and his wife is standing behind him, screaming and banging him on the back with both fists. And when she was shown the video of it, she had no recollection. So it really is a moment of temporary insanity. If you're into that kind of thing, I happen to be into that kind of thing. And so, let somebody else take pictures.
Chandrasekhar, this is what you should do, if anything, because we're not going to convince you not to do it, because you're going to make the same dumb mistake that the rest of us have all made. Get yourself a good medium focal length lens, maybe 300 millimeter telephoto or zoom that'll go up to 300. And I'm not quoting that number, just think about it. And then get a filter that'll go on the end of it, a solar filter that's perfectly safe to go on the end of it, and then take some pictures of the sun when it's not anywhere near an eclipse time. And make sure that it's pointed about how you like. Make sure that you can focus on the sun easily. You'll have an hour and a half or so before the solar eclipse goes total. During that time, you can take lots of little pictures of the moon, with the moon cutting out part of the sun. And then put it away. When totality comes, just look up and look. And just look around a little bit too, but do whatever you want, because it's one of those ecstatic moments where you're going to do whatever you want. You will have a camera hanging around your neck. You can't pick it up, point it, and shoot. These are fast exposures, generally speaking. You're not taking long exposures. So you can handhold whatever you want, or you could have it on a tripod for all I care. But the important thing is, don't let it control anything. It's just not that important. Okay, you're going to get much more with your eyes and your memory than anything else.
And I would modify that just to say that I look around more than look up, because stuff, that's where things that I didn't expect happen, in addition to the fact that the sun not looking anything like the pictures. The first one, it was very low altitude, and I didn't know at the time. That means that you get these effects of the shadow moving in that you don't get at higher altitude ones. And I've been to, I think, 8 or 9. I can't remember. I bet I know people have been to more than 30. And what I saw at the time was, we were east of the Cascade Mountains in Washington. The shadow, this darkness sweeping down from the mountains and moving towards us. And it was scary. I mean, this darkness moving towards us. And then just as it was reaching us, the shadow leapt up into the sky and covered us. And the stars came out and everything else. That was something I was completely unprepared for. And my wife tried to ask me about these wriggly things that they were seeing all over the place. They were shadow bands. It took another 20 years before I saw them, because I wouldn't look at them. And then when the totality hit, she was going, take a picture. Well, I had a camera around my neck, 50 millimeter lens, took pictures in all directions. Got a 360-degree sunset, it's called. It's light out in every direction, but not above you. So you just never know.
Oh, I want to go see an eclipse. Actually,
Yeah.
Actually, Mike, I am not an eclipse chaser. I've been to 5 or 6 or something like that.
That's plenty.
Yeah, you know, and I do like going to them, but I like to travel, and I'm not going to spend my travel time going to some place I've already been or something like that. Unless it's
Right.
real close, then I'll just go. But sometimes you know, like I know I want to go to Chile. So if there's going to be an eclipse down in Chile, I might go to Chile. I
Yeah.
haven't been to Chile yet, but I don't need to go back again to, you know, China. I've been there, and so I'm not going to go to another eclipse just to China just to see another eclipse.
Yeah. I've
That
been
kind of
The other thing about going to an eclipse, I'm sure all of us, as we planned to go, we said, okay, where are we going to go? And there's some planning around it. You can check the weather and you can say, well, this is going to be clear. But you don't have to be anyplace special. You don't have to be in a stadium down in University of Illinois with 20,000 other people. You could be by the side of the road. As long as you're near the center line, any place will have the same eclipse as some place with a hotel. Just pick a spot, pull over, find the clearing, sit down. And I would say don't take pictures your first time. Try your second time, maybe.
Yeah, I always like to be away from people and try and find a good spot ahead of time, and then maybe with a couple other people. But I don't really need a 10,000 close personal friends around me all the time. It's just a big nuisance.
That's funny coming from a man who was showing all these pictures of 10,000 friendly people looking through his telescope all night.
Yeah.
So at any rate, hey, here's a question for you, and it
Good.
comes from my dearest friend. Let me look up his name. Steve Baldwin. What are your go-to objects for outreach? What are your go-to? Where would you be going to? What would you be showing off people right now?
Right now it's new moon, so that takes the best object in the sky for outreach.
Yeah.
And so that's why you can do astrophotography and outreach without a problem, because next weekend will be first quarter moon. It's always the best for a public star party because you know, it never disappoints. People have never seen it up close before. There is a video called, I think it's A New Way to View the Moon. Anybody else know this? I can never remember the name. It's the best thing I've ever seen that captures the thrill of doing outreach and showing things to people. I'll try and maybe before the end of the program, I'll be able to find a link to that and share it with people. Everybody should, it's like 4 minutes. And so that's always it. Then whatever planets there are. And remember, you know, years ago, in the 70s, 80s, we would always go to back then I was in the LA Astronomical Society, so we'd have a star party out in a dark place and we'd advertise that people could come out and join us. Well, nobody ever did because they had to drive them for an hour out into the mountains and then drive home after that. Why would they want to do that? So it was John Dobson that figured out you take the telescopes to where the people are. But if you're in the middle of San Francisco or Los Angeles or something else, you're not going to look at deep sky stuff. Now, you can do a little bit of that stuff, planetary nebula. Like if you ever get a chance to look through the telescopes at Mount Wilson, it's kind of light polluted, but the big telescopes capture a lot of light and you can blow up planetary nebulas. They're very concentrated. So it's the surface brightness that matters. But nothing's got surface brightness like Jupiter or Saturn. Mars always disappoints because you know what Mars looks like. It's just too small. But just about anything. But if it's going to be something like that, if you're out in a darker place, the planetaries are good, and you know the big ones, M42 and
yeah. The important thing is don't look at the things that might interest you in a dark site, because they may not be at all visible, particularly when you're going sidewalk astronomy.
Yeah.
So, you know, globular clusters could very well be more important than some nebula that otherwise would be fantastic out where it was dark. Where was the question about, is it better to have pictures like EAA, or is it better to have a live viewing through the telescope? There it is. Chris Georgie. No, maybe that's not. Pete F. wants to know, when doing astronomy with the public, is it better to do visual astronomy with eyepieces or electronic assisted?
Well, this is sort of like asking whether, you know, Mac or PC or and everybody has a different opinion. To me, it's absolutely indisputable. I am an eye to glass person. That I mean, you can show a live image and you can tell it's live because it's wiggling around, but it's still not the same experience to me. And I don't think it is to most people either when they can look up and see it like that. Now, a lot of people do this, and the main reason for doing it is if you've got a big crowd, you can put it up on a screen and show it to everybody. And that's cool. And it is live. It is coming from the telescope right there. So it is kind of neat. It's better than just a picture or a video you took last week. But the thing is, the photons are kind of the same. I mean, the picture's the same. To me, it's when they're going straight into your eyeball that you're actually seeing it.
The way I answered the question is it's everybody's got a TV and they've seen pictures of the moon.
Yeah.
They haven't necessarily looked through a telescope.
That's the important thing. And you know, in a way, looking at a screen that's got a live feed from the telescope you're standing next to is kind of like looking through the telescope. And now, of course, there are the electronic telescopes where they have image intensifiers, you know, and you really you look into an eyepiece, but you're looking at a video screen, and it's just almost like live. But the people that have them think they're great, but it just wouldn't, for me, it wouldn't be the same. I think if you want to give somebody a real experience for the first time, especially, yeah, just do it with optics, no electronics.
Okay. I think we got all the questions. Anybody see any others? We are going to get ready for Brandon next week. He's going to be talking about the Into the Dark Nebula. Hope you can all come back and join us. I want to thank Mike for being here today. His program was a little different than our regular programs because it's trying to emphasize that what we can do with taking pictures is reach and touch a lot of people. And we've all been doing that. And this is for the Riverside Astronomical Society. We always have our outreaches from day 5 to day 10 or 12 or 15 of the lunar cycle so that we can take advantage of the moon being there. And we are, of course, in town to do that. So it's a good to be reminded that we're a big part of it. We make some pictures, but we also take our stuff out and show people what we're doing. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Yeah, I'm glad to. And let me emphasize too that taking your pictures, showing them to people, giving a talk or something like that, your own pictures, this is a big part of it. I mean, this is how people experience astronomy, but they don't get that much of an explanation about it. So, you know, take your stuff out and show people how you do it. If it's in a talk or anything else, and that
they are really amazed that you can take that picture. How can you take that picture? You're not a spaceman. How do you go out there? How do you do that? It's just, there's so much to tell them. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week when we hear about Brandon's story. Okay. Bye. Okay.